And we're going to be having a chat with, we've spoken to him very briefly, but he'll be here, young George Plunkett, and he takes lots and lots of great photographs, and I first met him because he took some photographs of some cinemas in Old Norwich in the 1930s, and he's the honorary librarian of the Norfolk and Norwich Archaeological Society, and he's still one of the vice presidents, and we'll be talking to him very, very, very shortly. Well, a gentleman, as I say, that is no stranger to Norfolk and Norwich, indeed, especially Radio Norfolk, because he's already been on the airways talking about a book that he produced many years ago, and it's George Plunkett. Good afternoon to you, George.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Oh, very well, thank you, yes.
A little trip out into the big city on a Sunday afternoon. Yes. I've got a book here that you produced. It's called Rambles in Old Norwich, and when did this come out then,
yes.
George?
1990. Just over 5 years ago.
Yeah. What was it all about? There's some lots of photographs in here that you've taken.
Well, it's largely about photographs that, of buildings that are no longer existing, although I have included a number that do still remain in the city. And various features such as old doorways and that sort of thing. Unusual
sort of pictures they are, George. I mean, I'm looking here at St Giles' 8 bells before the rehanging in 1932. They're wonderful photographs. In fact, you wouldn't know if they were taken in the 30s or if they were taken this year. They're great pictures, and of course these bells are sitting there. So there's a picture of one of the old gas lamps in the city you've got here.
Yes.
When did you start taking the photographs then, George?
Well, I first started in 1931. With a simple box camera, which I got by collecting a number of coupons from John Bull, which was a magazine that came out at that time.
Yeah, what was the magazine about then?
Oh, well, sort of more political things, I think.
Yeah.
It was actually my father who took the magazine. I wasn't particularly interested in it, but we did save these coupons and sent them up and got this Ensign box camera. That wasn't very suitable for what I wanted to take, and the following year I purchased an Ensign folding camera which had a rising and cross front on it, which is suitable for taking photographs of buildings. If you can't get far enough back, you operate the rising front and you can get the top in and cut out some of the foreground.
Oh, really? So if you're taking a picture on one side of the street to the other, you can actually put your... Now, did you have to rest your camera on anything?
Not necessarily, no. It just depends whether if it's a dull day or anything like that, perhaps I would then. I'd got a tripod that I would use, yes.
Were you born in Norwich, George?
Yes.
When were you born in Norwich?
1913.
So you've seen lots of changes in the city, of course.
Absolutely, yes.
More changes in Norwich than round Norfolk?
Yes, I suppose so, yes. Of course, the war did vast changes with the bombing and such like, but before that there was slum clearance, which it was partly the demolition of slum clearance in the late 20s and 30s that set me off on photographing a lot of these old buildings before too many got pulled down.
Where was most of the slum clearance done? Were they sort of terraced houses you're talking about?
Yes. The first slum clearance area was Barrack Street, I believe, and much of that was cleared away before I had a camera, unfortunately. Because there were all these little yards leading off with little tenement houses all crowded round, all sharing a common tap and perhaps only one toilet to 4 or 5 houses. It was shocking, really. So that, mind you, some of the property, it was a shame that they couldn't be preserved because they were perhaps medieval timber-framed buildings that had come down in the social scale and could have been restored. A typical example is Flower Pot Yard in Oak Street.
Flower Pot Yard?
Yes, which Colonel Glendenning, who was a member of our Archaeological Society and is a very keen restorer of old buildings, he acquired the property as probably the worst slum in Norwich, and had it completely restored, and it's now in use, I believe, as offices.
Oh, it's still there then?
Yes, yes.
How far down Oak Street would that be then?
Nearly opposite Sussex Street, on the riverside of Oak Street.
Of course, yes. There's a pub there, the tavern.
Yes.
The public house there.
Yes.
And there's those old toilets that are just not far from Oak Street, are they? on sort of what would that be? The bottom of Barrack Street, would it be?
Yes.
Where the St Christmas, where the flyover is, there's those
right.
old 1930s-looking toilets there, aren't there?
Yes.
And they're a sort of a landmark in the city. And this book is full of a selection of Norwich churches, of course, because we were famous in Norwich, weren't we, for pubs and churches?
That's right.
How many was it?
Oh, I said as many pubs as there were days in the year, and as many churches as weeks.
52 churches and 365 pubs.
I don't know that that worked out exactly, but that was a near enough estimate, I suppose.
And there's some gorgeous photographs in this book. There are pictures of the marketplace before the City Hall was built, of course.
Yes.
There are some photographs of what used to be the library and the magistrates' court, that looks like to me. Oh, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's the Bank of England court.
Oh, in Queen Street, yes.
Yes, of course, it's
right.
in there, yes.
Yes. When Bally and Holdenstein extended their factory, they acquired the house at the end of Old Bank of England Court, which had, for a time in the 19th century, been the Bank of England, and they pulled it all down except for the ground floor. And anyhow, after Bally's moved out to Hall Road...
Oh, the shoe factory, Bally's, yeah?
They reconstructed the building, but the frontage isn't quite the same as it was originally, but at least it sort of completed the courtyard again from being rather a sorry sight.
You've got a marvellous photograph in here of the St Simon and Jude Church from the southeast. That's at the foot of Elm Hill, isn't it?
That's right.
Which is now a brass rubbing. Is that the... No, it's not. That's on Magdalen Street, is it?
No, Wensum Street.
Wensum Street,
yes, which is the continuation of Magdalen Street.
Yes, which, of course, I get in a muddle, which is now the Scout Shop. And
That's right, yes.
And that is just smothered in growth of some sort. That looks like an ivy, a giant ivy or something. You can't see, you just see the shape of the church covered in all this greenery.
In the late 1830s, the bishop gave his consent for it to be demolished, but I think the Norwich Society stepped in and got them to change his mind, and restoration started, but then the war took place and halted the proceedings, but then further contributions towards the restoration were made in the 1950s, and it was since converted into the Scout headquarters.
Yeah, it's marvellous to think that these things are still in existence. I mean, you've got the Sproston windmill here. It was a post mill.
Yes.
The body of the mill turned to trim the sails to the wind. Where was this then in Sproston?
Just before you get to the Wroxham Road roundabout, the junction of Sproston Road and Wroxham Road,
I know, yes.
roundabout.
Where the brickmakers is.
Yes, just on the right-hand side going out of the city, just before you get to that roundabout, a little lane leading off up a slope, and that stood at the top of the slope.
Really? So it was just up on sort of Mousehold, really?
Yes.
That was on Mousehold.
It burnt down in 1933, unfortunately.
I've heard of this, but I've never seen a photograph of it,
Yes.
and I thought this was over 100... I thought it had been missing for 100 years, but of course...
No, 1933. Mr. Clark made a scale model of it, which is in the Science Museum at London.
Really? Well, you are you were the honorary librarian of the Norfolk and Norwich Archaeological Society, and you're still one of their vice presidents, because
That's right.
you still, even now, go out and take these wonderful photographs. Don't you?
Yes. up until a year ago, I used to go out on my bicycle and do about 35-mile round trips, taking photographs of churches and other interesting buildings.
Carrying your camera and everything?
Yes. Unfortunately, I came off my bike just a year ago and fractured my hip, and I've been on Shanks's pony since then.
Relying on lifts and things?
Yes, well, when my sons come over, about once or twice a month, they take me out and around to various places which are sort of, well, I could go by bus, I suppose, but there's a job to sort of sort out the timetables and things.
Well, George, we're going to have another chat about your photographs and what sort of thing you're out taking photographs of at the moment. And if there's anything perhaps that you'd like to take a picture of and you need someone to come up with a little information, I mean, we've got the whole of Norfolk at our disposal. I know that you're very fond of opera. Yeah. Because you've got a nice pile of opera records in your front room. And I've picked this one out for you. You wanted me to play something nice from Bizet's Carmen. Yes, so we'll play you this anyway. Hope you enjoy it, George.
Thank you very much.
Let me have a quick word with George, because this is we've had some people ringing. Jackie from Cromer has asked if George planned his photographic collection, and he's brought some of his photographs in. Did you plan your collection, George? Because she was concerned that not that you were a jinx, but you've taken lots of photographs of buildings that are now missing. Did you hear that they were going to be pulled down? You rushed out to take the pictures?
Only in very few cases. In the 1930s, I started on what you might call a survey. And I had a map of Norwich, and I'd go in each street and take photographs of various buildings which seemed to be of antique value. And as I completed each street, I'd sort of pencil it in on my map.
Oh, because in this lovely book, The Rambles in Old Norwich, that you produced in 90, there are 2 or 3 maps in there, you know, the west of the river and
right.
Thorpe Railway Station and Prince of Wales Road.
Yes.
And then in the following chapter, there's photographs to accompany it. So that was the map, or one of the maps that you used, I suppose.
No. A more up-to-date map than that. That's A.W. Morant's map of 1878.
Oh, really? You see, I haven't studied it, and I should have done, shouldn't I? Because I would have noticed that. It's a beautiful reproduction. Is this something that comes from the Norfolk and Norwich Archaeological Society?
No, that map was provided by my publishers, Dalton's. That's in their collection. I don't know.
It's a wonderful map, isn't it?
Yes.
And all these green fields everywhere, just off Pockthorpe Street, and not far from Coalgate Street. You go up from St Martin's and Oak Street. Do we still call it St Martin? Is it just Oak Street
Just
now?
Oak Street now.
And at the bottom of Oak Street, there are these, where Barker's Road is, there are these marvellous gardens and allotments and things. It's incredible. St Augustine's School, the Infirmary Road, got lots of these names of and there's a mill up here at Magdalen Road. There's a mill just off Magdalen Road. Well, of course, they're all estates now, aren't they? They're in Silver Road, where Silver Road and Silver Street is. It's just fields. Of course, they're all Victorian terraced houses now, aren't they?
That's right. Yes.
Well.
Yes.
So you went out to do that, and you just ticked them off on the map. You're at the moment taking lots and lots of photographs of village churches, aren't you?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
They're gorgeous pictures. We've also had Martin ring in from Watton, asks which was George's favourite building, which is now no more. Which was your favourite building that is no more? Is there anything that springs to mind that you've photographed and thought
in
of?
Norwich, I think the new Star Inn in Quayside, I think it was a crying shame that was allowed to be demolished, and as recently as the 1960s, when they should have known better.
The 60s was a blight architecturally, wasn't it? It was terrible.
Yes, the new Star was an old Tudor building, wooden framed, and it was the one, apart from the cobblestones, the quayside had cobbles the same as Elm Hill still has.
Really?
And they've all been either taken up or tarred over at least. And with the demolition of the New Star as well, Quayside has just become, well, nothing special about it other than being next to the river.
It's a great shame, isn't it?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that was your favourite building that
I think
you thought
so,
was a great
yes.
shame. Was it a very big place, just a small building?
Not very big, no. Just 2 stories and a couple of big gables in the roof, yes.
You take these photographs and you actually develop them yourself, don't you?
That's right, yes.
How do you go about developing these now, then?
Oh, well, I have to black out the pantry for the developing the films. But with the prints, you don't have to be quite so careful with letting light in, and I can get the kitchen sufficiently dark to do my printing. I haven't got an enlarger. All my prints are contact prints. But I used to make glass slides. And
because you've got a magic lantern, haven't you, which I've been after.
Yes. Yes. And in the 1930s and until the early 1950s, I belonged to the Norfolk and Norwich Photographic Society, where I picked up quite a number of useful tips and had some of these slides exhibited in their annual exhibition.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So you're still tripping round the churches, and I notice in here you've got wonderful details on Blickling Hall, and they're all in black and white, and they're lovely little prints. They're sort of, what are they, 2 inches by 3?
Yeah, 2 1/4 for 3 1/4.
Yeah,
yes,
they're gorgeous little black and white prints. And of course, I think all these photographs are really old, but lots of them have been taken quite recently, haven't they?
Yes. Extend over well, as I say, from 1931 to the present day,
and
with a gap during the war, unfortunately. I managed to take a few photographs sort of in the 1940s before I went overseas.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one little incident. I was standing outside Haddiscoe Church and taking a photograph of that. And a man came up to me and practically accused me of being a German spy. I said, but there's nothing here that would interest the Germans. Oh, he said, you can see Caister Water Tower from here.
No.
So anyhow, after that, I obtained a leaflet which set out things that weren't, were prohibited because of the war effort, but certainly medieval churches weren't included in the list.
That wasn't one of them, no. Well, George, you're still kept busy with it all. I know that you're still kept very, very busy with it all. And there's so much we could have talked about this afternoon. The time has disappeared, unfortunately. It seems as if we haven't even scratched the surface of this wonderful collection. And how many photographs do you have in your collection? Because I know they're all filed beautifully in little envelopes. All the negatives are in boxes.
Yes. I've got just over 3,000 Norwich ones and just over 2,000 Norfolk.
My goodness.
Plus a number in other parts of the country which I've taken when on holiday, of course.
And they're all, every one of them's written on the back, or that's got a little typed label. You're very meticulous. What did you used to do for a living then? What were you doing for a living, George?
Oh, I was administrative assistant in charge of the school health service in Norwich.
so you were in a
keeping records and things. You see, the school medical record cards and arranging appointments for children to see the doctor or attend the hospital and so on.
When everything had to be typed out and written out and filed and cross-checked. And of course you do that with these albums. They are gorgeous. Everything's got a little label. All the negs are kept numbered in boxes and alphabetically. George, that's really kind of you to come in. It's lovely to see this wonderful collection again. And we'll have a chat another time, I think, because the time has beaten us this afternoon. We've only got just over 3 minutes left up to the 5 o'clock. We'll have the news at 5 o'clock, and then don't forget, John Taylor will be with you with his melodies of the golden years. So there we are. It's been a lovely afternoon. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed Olly's Sunday Supplement this week. Next week, we've got some surprises for you as well. Amongst the special guests will be Derek James, who introduced me originally to George because in his column in the Eastern Evening News, he had some wonderful photographs of the Carlton cinemas and Norwich cinemas. So perhaps that's another chat with George at a later date. But anyway, he'll be with us amongst others next week, and we'll look forward to that.